It's all about water quality these days in our oceans and in our ponds and lakes. With me today, Karen Malkus Benjamin. You are a Coastal Health Resource Coordinator for the town of Barnstable.
Yes.
It's a long title. What do you do?
So I have many facets to my job, but the main focus is that I actually follow the state bathing beach regulations and protect public health on recreational waters. And how that started was in 2000, the state passed a law that required operators of beaches to monitor their beaches and meet certain standards for bacteria that are indicators, and that was to reduce risk to the public from pathogens. 2010, they decided we needed to permit the beaches, so part of my job is actually permitting beaches and having the operators understand what that entails. And then now, in the last 5 years, we're having more concerns about other types of creatures in the water that are impacting our health. So my life has evolved.
Just like it does in the water.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's interesting, there is always an enormous amount of discussion around nitrogen in our waters, and it's a huge issue and challenge for Cape Cod as well as for the town of Barnstable. But there's other things in other waters that are important as well to public health as well as to the health of the water itself. So talk a little bit about what might be found in ponds and lakes and streams here in the town of Barnstable.
Yeah, well, the first thing you have to think about is all these waters are not swimming pools, they're ecosystems, and they're complex organisms and plants and the physical environment that work together. So the minute we start disrupting that with whatever we're doing, whether it's just putting a lawn in or building a house or pouring things down our septic system, we're going to impact that ecosystem. So there are all sorts of things in the water, and we're encouraging them by providing them with nutrients, which are nitrogen and phosphorus, and then also some of the other things we're adding, like pesticides and herbicides, change the balance in the system. So it's very complicated. There's no one clear answer, but monitoring it and sort of keeping track of what's going on is the best approach we can take, and we get guidance, of course, from the state and the EPA. But I think that what worries me most recently are the cyanobacteria blooms that are in the fresh water.
And cyanobacteria, that's a scary word. What is it?
Well, it's as the word suggests. Cyanobacteria are a type of bacteria, but they used to be called blue-green algae because they behave like algae. They photosynthesize, and during the day they produce oxygen. And so they even think billions of years ago they might have been responsible for creating our atmosphere. So they're not completely bad guys, and they're everywhere, ubiquitous in the environment. Right. You can find them in soil, in fresh water. There's some species that are in marine waters. So they're a part of our world, but they are very adaptable. They've been around for 1 billion years, as I said. So if you give them the right conditions, they're going to go blooming. And they're not like the pathogens we measure for at the beaches normally. They don't infect you. What happens is they produce toxins as part of their basic metabolic behaviors, and so those toxins are like being poisoned. So if a dog or a child or anybody swimming and they are exposed to the toxin, you're being poisoned. And there are many kinds of toxins that they produce. The problem is they don't always do that, and we don't know why. So what's made my job hard is sort of not being overprotective, but not being underprotective of our public. So it's a challenge.
It is a challenge, and we think about this. So the town of Barnstable has, and I am amazed, there are hundreds of ponds and lakes in our town, it seems like. I mean,
182.
It's really an enormous amount of water that has to be covered, and a lot of these are public spaces.
Yeah, that's a big problem too, because as I said, there's a law to protect bathing beaches and the permitted beaches. There are no laws or regulations about all the waters out there. There's guidance. The World Health Organization, the EPA, even our state, the toxicology department has recommendations for what we can do. But Barnstable, I feel very lucky. Tom McKean has allowed me, and the Board of Health have given me authority to actually pursue this in sort of ahead of the problem. We started in 2015 by really purposely monitoring before we're just reacting. And I think our new program is really evolving, as I said, into a way that we can anticipate blooms. And a lot of that has to do actually with the group that we're going to talk about in April, talk with in April. Nancy Leland and Hillary Snook both have trained us and we're using their research to sort of you do a new monitoring protocol.
Right. So there's an event coming up on April 5th at the Harborside Room at the county in conjunction with Association to Preserve Cape Cod. This is really dedicated to this particular issue. So we always see lots of other events around nitrogen, but this is really about the cyanobacteria.
Right, especially as a health official. I mean, nitrogen is problematic to our estuaries and creates a lot of ecosystem damage and a lot of blooms and stuff, but I'm worried about people being exposed to toxins. So I wanted to, as I said, get us sort of ahead of it and learn more about it. And the program, we've been collaborating with APCC to find a way to do this that's effective and efficient for a few people to go out there and at least, start getting some information. What I'd like to say, though, is we can't get everywhere. Like you said, there are a lot of ponds, people say 182, and there's no way in one day, or even with my lovely assistants, that we could get to them all. So I rely on the public, too, to let me know if something's going on. Again, I can only really manage public areas, and a pond has many nooks and crannies, so we can't get to all of them, but at least we can alert the public to pay attention. And I think that's really important to make informed decisions about your health, your pet's health, and your children, of course. Hardest, of course, is to reach out to visitors who I don't necessarily have direct contact with.
So what are we looking for in these ponds? What would, if we wanted to contact you with a concern, what would we be looking for to give you that information?
Well, often the blooms are very obvious. They cloud the waters, and you can't, when you go in knee deep or to hip deep, you can't see your feet. So cloudy water is usually a sign. Could be other things that make the water cloudy, but that's usually a first sign. Also strange colors. They can be a bright green, a bright blue, some are even red. So colors that don't look right. Smells, some of them produce unusual smells, kind of earthy, smells like lawn cuttings or strong. If they're decaying, they even smell horrible, like you get, you want to fall over. But the big thing that people see right away are the scum lines, we call them scum lines, and they wash up on shore, and they're very brilliant colors, and again, they just don't look right. They don't belong there.
Okay, and how would they contact you with that information?
They can always call the health division and ask for me specifically. There's a web page that we have that they can contact me on. I also would invite people to be on an alert list. So for specific ponds, if there's something going on, I send out an email, or they can come back, tell me what's going on there too. I have a lot of residents who are regularly in contact with me. And what we do is we basically go out and sample the water, either just with a scoop if it's scummy, or we actually do a tow net with a plankton tow. So there are lots of ways we handle it, but visually is the first step.
Visual is the first step. And does this affect the growth of good ecosystems in the ponds as well? As we always talk about invasive species in our lakes and ponds too, but does that bacteria actually promote other things?
It's, again, very complicated. In some cases, like the treatment, we found in, for example, Long Pond, Centerville, that the treatment for the invasive actually has encouraged the cyanobacteria, which is really frustrating and scary, because the toxins have gotten worse rather than better, and we're trying to solve another problem. So it is complicated and not very clear, direct line from point A to B. What I would say is, though, if you're seeing blooms, there's something wrong with the balance in the ecosystem. It's telling you. It's more than a canary, the elephant in the coal mine, as it were. Yeah.
Right. And then the event at the Harborside Room at the County Complex, good for residents to go, as well as people who are concerned with the environment or work for environmental?
I think everyone's invited, absolutely. I think we're also trying to get a lot of townspeople, other health officials from other towns, make this a bigger Cape thing. It's a problem throughout the Cape, and the more we work together and share data. Also, the APCC is starting a new map tool that they'll discuss that will be available for everyone in all towns to use and see where things are going on, where things are actually being monitored or not, because that's good to know. Because a lot of people just assume, oh, my pond's being tested. May not be being tested. But on that note, though, I want to say that individuals can do a lot to help their ponds on their own. Number one, maybe start an association if there isn't one. Pay attention to things in their own yard and in their own lifestyles that can help water quality. And a lot of that just has to do with the frontage in front of the pond, but even if you're way back, how you treat the land and what you put in your septic tank, or what you throw out or don't buy. I mean, there are things you don't need to buy that you may not need or you don't want in your water. If you don't want it in your water, don't put it on the ground.
Right, exactly. Well, I know having worked with APCC and their stormwater program, their storm drainage, there's lots of things that go down that drain that people out of sight, out of mind. And
Right.
it's really, I think, all up to all of us to maybe make a conscious effort of what we're putting down the drain or down the toilet or down our driveway when we wash our cars.
Absolutely, and what we put on our lawns and on our bodies too. I mean, there are all sorts of choices, and it's up to each person. But each person does make a difference. Sometimes people think, "Oh, it's not up to me. You know, the town will fix it or the county will fix it." But actually, each of us matters. And if you do live by a pond, one of the best things you can do is plant a native buffer strip, and that just means an area that's not lawn or not open that protects stormwater or infiltrates stormwater before it reaches the water. Huge. Huge, huge, huge. And it's just simple, pretty little, doesn't have to block your view, a lovely little buffer zone. So if everyone did that, we'd be in much better shape.
Excellent. We'll have to, I think there's an event coming up that the APCC is doing on gardens as well. And I know Barnstable Clean Water is doing things like that as well. So,
Yes.
you know, if everybody takes just a little bit of time, thinks about what they're doing and makes some small changes, our waters will be much cleaner.
Absolutely.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Karen.
Oh, thank you for having me.